In an unexpected turn of events, Penn State is heading to the Big Ten championship game to take on Oregon. The Nittany Lions took care of business against Maryland after Michigan shocked the world and defeated Ohio State for a fourth consecutive season. We break it all down. Nittany Nation Overtime is next.
What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I drew it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch.
Welcome into another edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm your host, Ryan Riskey. I'm joined by the Nitwits, Mark Brennan and Neil Rudell, as well as former Nittany line equipment manager Spider Caldwell. And guys, when we were sitting here this time last week, I don't think anyone thought we'd be previewing the Big Ten championship game against Oregon.
Yeah, how about it? Ryan Day sure didn't. Just the beauty of sports. You know, I mean, the unpredictability, you just don't know, and it's been happening in college football all year long, and with the backdrop of the playoffs, it's just so cool. And I know we've talked about it, it has taken too long to get here, but boy, is it fun now that it's here. All the different possibilities. I mean, here Penn State really playing with house money, was not expected to be there. They're an underdog. They've played in this game a few years ago, so you know they're familiar with that. I just think just wonderful possibilities.
All I could say is thank God it was 31-7 at the half, because all you saw in the press box was media people on all their travel sites trying to figure out how to get to Indianapolis. None of us thought it was going to happen, and as Spider was saying, I mean, it was unbelievable, right? Who saw this coming?
It was, and it pained me to root for Michigan on Saturday before our game. But I figured they were 5 and 6, so they're already demoralized for the year. So it was easier to root for them then. But now what an opportunity for our guys! It was so exciting. Like Neil said, to be able to, that's college football at its fine. The beauty of it.
You know, as much as people get on Franklin about his 1-0 mantra, this is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Seriously, I mean, that may sound like a cliche, but when they lose to Ohio State, all they had to do was take care of business. And to his credit, and to the coaching staff's credit, and to the players' credit, they stayed focused. All you have to do is look around college football to see what happens when you don't look at every single game like that. And you know, we're looking now at James Franklin with 11 wins in 5 different seasons. And that hadn't happened at Penn State in it was 22 years that it took to win that many. So I just think great job by the coaching staff after a tough loss to Ohio State. Great job by the players. Great job by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly a team that's on the rise and has improved in a lot of levels. And they're diverse. I mean, they can beat you in a lot of ways. Their defense is playing great. I mean, on offense, between Aller and Warren, and their running game and their offensive line has been functional. They found a kicker. They've found a lot of different ways. They've come back. They've been tough on the road. This team is going to be a difficult out for anybody.
And I was going to say, kudos to Barker. I mean, in a clutch game, I mean, we needed that 3 points there at the beginning. Just to get up, because we were off to that rough start and to get that 49-yard field goal in those conditions. Because trust me, that ball is as hard as a rock in that conditions, and he's doing a heck of a job.
And one thing, like the vibe in the stadium completely changed when that game went final. And it's just kind of like they really have a chance to get back to Indianapolis. They control their own destiny. I was in the concourse huddled with a huge group of fans who were watching on the mini monitors there, and I think they were having a hard time processing what was happening in that game when Michigan took the lead.
Well, James even acknowledged, even though they said that he preached Maryland in the pregame, didn't say anything, he said, but he acknowledged that he thought their slow start may have been because they were jolted with a distraction. Singleton fumbled, and then Maryland scored on the first play. I mean, 2 plays, shock plays like that, so then they regrouped.
I thought it was comical. Drew Aller's great with the media, But he said afterward that he didn't know what the Ohio State-Michigan result was before the game. And I'm like, Drew,
There's
come
no
on.
way.
You have to be kidding me. But, having said that, seriously, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, that they really were, outside of the slow start, and that's kind of been a pattern this year, but they were able to stay focused. And then when they put the hammer down, I mean, that was really it. And to be able to get so many of your young guys in the game in the second half and so many of your veterans off the field, knowing now these kids thought they were going to have Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off. Now all of a sudden it's right back to the grind.
And just look at the possibilities here with championship week. I mean, if Penn State can win this game, they potentially could be number one. I mean, because, if Texas gets beat, and now I know, and we'll keep an eye on Notre Dame, whatnot, but I mean, the possibilities are very real. If they win this game, I guess they would punch a ticket to the Rose Bowl. They would then buy their time off. So a lot of incentives.
And again, that'd be the first time since 1999 they'd be ranked number one. And I mean, that's a strong resume, knocking off the number one team in the nation while you're ranked number 4. So I think they'd have a good resume to, qualify for that number one spot should they beat Oregon.
And I think it's funny too that you have basically two newbies. I mean, we're not really a newbie in the Big Ten, but technically we're not the traditional 10. And with Oregon being new as well, coming in and we're playing, in the Big Ten championship game.
Well,
our last time we played was
Right.
30 years ago. I can't believe it's been 30 years, guys. 30 years ago, and we just had our reunion this year for the '94 team. So I think it's just pretty ironic, and that we go back to the Rose Bowl if we win this game. Well, when we win this game, we're winning this game.
There you go.
And I think one thing that'll help Penn State is that I would assume it's going to be mostly Penn State fans. So it's going to be tougher for Oregon to travel, and I'm not sure how well their fans travel overall, especially cross country.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because the only thing is they've been ticketed for this game a lot of the year, so their fans have had plenty of notice, whereas the Penn State fans, it's a little more spontaneous. But I agree with you, Ryan. They, with the playoff, they've been, a quarterfinal, a semifinal, and maybe a final if you're Oregon. So how much money and how, are you going to spend?
Anyways, great talk right here. Penn State's done a lot of good things this year. One of the things that they've done is not get upset by the big teams. We're going to discuss that when we return on Nittany Nation Overtime.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Risky, Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Spider Caldwell. And guys, one thing that Penn State did a great job of this year is not letting unranked teams or teams that they should be beating upset them, because we've seen teams that are going to get into the college football playoff have let that happen. Notre Dame lost to NIU earlier in the year, and Ohio State losing to Michigan just knocked them out of the Big Ten championship game. Yeah,
and the list goes on. I mean, Alabama has 3 losses, including to Vanderbilt, Tennessee as well. You could say a little bit, some of the schedule. Penn State did not play Indiana, didn't play Michigan, hasn't played Oregon yet. And some of the Big Ten teams have had maybe a more difficult schedule. But I look at what Penn State has done on the road, and now the Minnesota game, with the fact that they went in and dominated Wisconsin, I think looks even better.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I think this is the first time they've won 5 road games on opposing campuses, not neutral sites, not Veteran Stadium, not Giant Stadium, not Riverfront, since '73. I mean, that's a long. So that is not an easy thing to do. I don't care what these teams are doing, but there's a reason it hasn't happened in all those years, because it's very difficult to do. They've also found different ways to win. You win in overtime. You mentioned Barker. You get the big field goal out at USC when nobody really knew what this kid was all about. At Wisconsin, you're able to pour it on late. At Minnesota, you find a way to win. This is what championship teams are all about.
Yeah, and they won at West Virginia as well. These are representative programs, maybe not individually. Any of these are great teams, at least this year. USC's been down. But collectively, I think, it's been
and they're still tough venues.
A body of work that's been okay.
They're still tough venues to play at.
Right.
And a lot of those teams are bowl eligible, too. So it's like, even though they weren't playing these teams when they were ranked, they're bowl eligible. And I believe entering this past week, Penn State had defeated, or they had played the most bowl eligible, second most bowl
Right.
eligible teams in all of college football. And I think that's something that needs to be said when you're talking about the schedule, because everyone's just saying, oh, they have a cakewalk schedule. It's like, well, they played a lot of teams with winning records.
No, and even Illinois. I mean, the Illinois game was a home game, but still, they ended up having a really good season for themselves.
Yeah, it's almost, I don't want to say it's a knock, but a lot of times people say, Franklin, he wins the games he's supposed to win. Well, guess what? That's important anymore. Look around college football and see who's not winning the games they're supposed to win.
True.
And if you do that, it's going to work out for you when you're playing in these monster conferences.
I agree with that. It bothers me a little bit because I think there's a resignation there that they're not supposed to win more than he has against Ohio State. And I like the fact that, hey, you might get them again. That's conceivable, and I think that's one of the neat parts of the playoff. But here's another opportunity. Had there not be a playoff this year, they'd be talking about, some
Absolutely.
good bowl game. But now you're going to have another big game opportunity, in the final and however long beyond that.
And something we discussed last week is this could also be a good measuring stick to see what they learned from the Ohio State loss in a game that can't end your season. You're still playing another guaranteed game after this.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, you beat Oregon, and I don't think people are really, harping on that Ohio State game nearly as much.
Especially
as obviously.
yeah,
I
first
mean, you're
round
going to
bye.
be in a position where you're very well positioned to make a serious run for that national title. So that's the beauty of this new playoff system. And as Neil mentioned earlier, why did it take so long to get here? It's just so much more fun.
Well, they defended the bowls for so many years, and at least they're integrating the bowls, and it's turned around, and now the bowls will find out who they have rather than determining, letting you know who they're going to take. So that's cool. A couple things that I think they kind of have to clean up after yesterday. Wasn't necessarily a dominating performance. They've only fumbled 6 times this year, and they fumbled 4 times yesterday. And they had a couple bad penalties, things that will cost you in a game like Saturday. But overall, a dominating performance against a real struggling team.
Well, and 3 block kicks in 2 weeks. I mean, those, when you talk about penalties and you talk about fumbles, these are the teams, if you do this against Oregon, you're going to lose.
When I go back to the weather, too, I think we really, I was worried about this game because it was so cold.
Yeah.
We weren't used to that. We've had a great year weather-wise. And it is, so that thing, like I said, that football feels like a rock in that field.
Your worst weather game, Spider, got to tell us. What was it?
Oh, my worst weather game. Well, the worst field conditions ever was Capital One Bowl in 2010. We played LSU in that monsoon, and it was a monsoon before, and that field completely blew up. I've never seen a field in that bad of conditions. Coldest game ever worked was probably one of the Notre Dame games.
Right.
Yeah.
87 Notre Dame at Beaver Stadium was tremendously cold. But actually, the 85 game in Beaver Stadium was a pouring rainstorm and at 33 degrees. But you were just soaked to the bone, and you were just so chilled. When Jerry Fouts was on the sideline, I was a ball boy running footballs on the sideline, and just trying to keep the balls dry was completely worthless. But we played a flawless game. We beat Notre Dame like 36-6 or something like that.
Yeah, it was great with Spider here. The renovations of Beaver Stadium, there was a nicely orchestrated thing that Chris Peterson and Greg Kincaid put together for the media in the press box. Some memories and laughs were shared. But Spider, what's going to happen there? In terms of the renovation.
You think of the history of that. Since it's been there really since 1960. And a lot of people don't realize, even before that, the middle part of the press box, where it says actually Beaver Stadium, that middle section was built in the 40s over at Beaver Field by Rec Hall.
Well, it seems so modern. I mean,
right. Well, that's what we always said. I mean, you guys know. You've been there for a lot of years. I mean, when you're inside that thing, people that have never been in it ask me, "So what's it like inside there?" I said, "You feel like you're inside the USS Yorktown."
Right, exactly.
And really, the metal plated floors and they upgraded with some carpet and paint, and whatnot. But no, it's going to be history. I mean, watching that thing go down, it's going to be kind of emotional for me in a fact, but it's going to be. And they're going to be actually. They're hoping we do get in the, we win this game and we get a bye because they can start construction immediately after next Monday. They're going to start construction. But if we have to host, then we have to wait till after Christmas.
And I thought that was a unique thing that they did, before the game, because for me, this is my 4th season on the Penn State beat. Listening to stories from you guys was really cool. And I think the feeling was, we probably were going to get one more game in that press box because, this is before Ohio State and Michigan went final. And I think right now, you're probably hoping, hey, let's get that first round bye. Let's, get to the quarterfinal round.
Yep.
Well, as they're doing a little goodbye ceremony to the Beaver Stadium press box, the TV in the background had the Ohio State-Michigan game on, and we're all kind of looking like, boy, I don't know. This may be the last game in the press box. But, yeah, we've covered a ton of games there. I've been fortunate enough, as much as Neil and I kid each other, we've sat next to each other for years and years and years, and cool. It's always been fun. We always hassle each other, but in a good-natured way.
Yeah, you know what? So many great memories, so many great friendships.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends have come out of the Penn State beat, and a lot of thoughts were exchanged about some of the people that came before us. The Tarmans and the Fran Fishers, and Bud and people that, were responsible for helping to build. Paul Alexander was there yesterday, and just so many names and memories were conjured up.
Yeah, Steve and Jack Hamiff had a great run, but before that, obviously, Fran Fisher and George Paterno, they made that press box their own in a special kind of way. But yeah, great people, great memories.
All right, well, thanks for sharing those stories. Anyways, we got to take another break. When we come back, the whole story wasn't the game. There were some things that happened afterwards. We discussed the post-game interaction between James Franklin and Mike Locksley.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Riskey, Mark Brennan, Neil Riddell, and Spider Caldwell. And guys, some tempers flared after the game between James and Mike Locksley over that late touchdown. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of personal between these guys. I admit, I don't know that I've ever seen a touchdown pass on as time was running out because he had run the two plays. He obviously could have taken a knee. He doesn't usually take a knee, but I didn't really like it. I just don't believe in that. It's already 38-7. I'm not buying the pollsters in this case. If you had Grunk in there, that's one thing. You've missed a couple chances to get him snaps. This was for Bola. Just to throw a touchdown pass on the last play, I'd rather that would have been on first or second down, I guess. I didn't like it.
I don't have as much of a problem with it. I wonder why Locksley has to make a big issue right after the game. I mean, it's not as if he doesn't know Franklin well enough to text him and say something. I mean, to me, it looked like he was trying to divert attention from his own team and its shortcomings, which basically fell apart. The other thing is, we have the lack of a handshake however many years ago. When they won in 2020, they put out a tweet saying, you were, we are. If you're going to play these games, if you're going to strut around and when you win a game, lose with a little bit of class. Right. I mean, I look at it a little bit differently than you do, Neil. I think if that's someone other than Tysier Denmark, and you could talk about Bo Prabula, but he only threw 3 passes in the game. So I get where you're coming from, but I don't have as big an issue with them scoring there.
And one thing for me is just like, you had your first team defense still out there. If you're that upset, you should have stopped them.
The 14 game was a different coaching staff. I know people are bringing that up.
I get it, but it's something where this team has tried to express this level of swagger and confidence when it plays Penn State, and it's like, hey, win the games, and you're gonna generate that sort of respect. And Locksley's not been afraid to take little shots here and there at Franklin along the way. How much of that's manufactured, just trying to generate some sort of fake rivalry, I don't know, but I don't have as much of a problem with it as some people do.
And also, as James said, it got a lot of guys meaningful snaps because you don't know when you might need to call on somebody, especially as you're playing more and more games.
Yeah, I mean, these guys were on the same staff at Maryland 20 years ago. So, I mean, there's been a rivalry that's been smoldering for years.
And it falls into recruiting, too. I mean, the recruiting battle and stuff. But
well, it hasn't been that much of a rivalry the last few years.
I know, it's true. And there's no love lost there between our two schools. And I agree. I'm kind of torn, too, with that, but and what
well, you have to be classy, Spider. Yeah. We're media people. We don't have to be. We can be.
So I'm pleading the fifth.
All right, guys. So we have one thing left. That's to crown our Nitwit of the Week. We'll be right back.
Don't miss a minute of Nittany Nation Overtime, now also on Apple and Spotify. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Nitwit of the week time, and looks like I won again. And guys, I want you to look closely at the graphic because on my line I had to shrink the size of the footballs because I've been winning so much this year.
You know, on second thought, I thought Franklin going for that touchdown was a terrible move because I would have been Nitwit of the week had they not scored there. So I'm changing everything I said. That was a terrible call. They should not have scored there. They should have taken a knee, and I would have been. You would have been. Crowing about being Nitwit of the Year, which you the host obviously is.
And we won Nitwit of the Year last year too. So, anyways, I guess it's time.
I don't think I'm officially closed out yet. So,
all right,
make your pick.
I think Penn State's rolling. I think they're going to beat Oregon. I'm going to say they win this 28-24. I think it'll be a close battle. I think Penn State's going to do the same thing. You know, they might start a little slow in the first half like they've had multiple weeks, except whether they're losing or trailing in that second half, they're going to find a way to get it done and change the narrative around them in big games.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's been hard to really look into Oregon as much as we would have liked to, given the short amount of time. But I do like the way Penn State's playing. I think they learned from the mistakes they made against Ohio State. I'm going to pick Penn State a little bit closer than that. I'm going to go 28-27 with a late field goal, maybe some goofy safeties and stuff involved in this. So I'm going 28-27, Penn State winning by 1.
Wow.
I
wasn't sure I was expecting all this. I want to pick Penn State. I think they've worked themselves. I think they're playing great. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say Penn State 28, Oregon 22.
Yeah, and I feel this is really going to be a slugfest. I'm thinking it's two really physical teams from what I've seen of Oregon. So I think it's going to be a little bit lower than that. I'm thinking, but it's definitely close. I'm looking at 21-20.
All right, guys. Well, we're all picking Penn State to win. That's all the time we have. Penn State is off to the Big Ten Championship game to take on Oregon. That concludes this episode of Nittany Nation Overtime.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime.